Miller here from Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. So before we get started, I've gotten a couple of comments online. People leave comments, right? You're old, fat, and bald. Yeah, but I've got experience using this stuff on the street against real attackers. So either put up with it or go find somebody that's slim and trim and just has one of these, right? Anyway, other comments have to do with any demonstrations or examples of this stuff that you're teaching in use. Yeah, a lot of you are watching this on Facebook, not on Facebook, on YouTube, right? So while you're here, after the lesson's over, it doesn't have to be my videos, right? Find people doing whatever they're doing, self-defense. I don't care what the martial art is, and it doesn't even have to be this one, right? And then start looking for things. There's all kinds of examples and all kinds of demonstrations. Some are positive examples, some are negative examples, okay? Hatsumi Sensei, over the years, has made this point, right, that it's not our job to spoon feed you. It's our job to point you in a given direction, right, so that you can do your research. You can do your homework. You can gain the experience that you need, okay? Just recently, I shared a meme on Facebook that I thought was brilliant. It was by the cowboy Will Rogers, for anybody that knows who that was, or again, a Google search, you can find that out, right? And it was kind of a instruction to like a father to a son, right? And basically says, son, there's three kinds of men in the world, right? One learns by reading. By implication, this means by studying, research, that kind of stuff, right? A few more by observation. So maybe not book smart, but they're paying attention to what's going on and they're learning from these observations, right? But the rest of them pretty much just need to pee on the electric fence to get what it is that they need to get, right? So same thing goes for people that are training, right? Now, I would say that the experience of peeing on the fence as to why you shouldn't do that ever again, right? It's an important kind of thing, right? I would never discount my experience of dealing with violent, raw rage and all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I don't want to have to do it again, right? I've gotten really good at handling it, but either way, right? It's still a benefit as long as you survive, right? Okay, but this is the same for students, right? What I find by and large, right, is the number of students who will actually take a lesson and go do the research and study it and figure it out, right? The same kind of work that Hatsumi Sensei did and I did and most of my teachers have done and whatnot. Well, I say most, probably all, right? It's slim in comparison to those who have spent the time trying to learn by observing, right? Those kind of things. And that's, both of those combined are tiny compared to the number of people that expect that the teacher will just spoon feed them what they need to know, right? The number of people that get irritated, some have actually left the art when Hatsumi Sensei made statements like, I will lie to you to see if you're paying attention. I don't need to be lied to. I'm paying money for you to tell me what. Well, okay. If by adult age, you're not used to people lying, right? Maliciously. And then you got somebody who cares for your well-being and is willing to do it, to do a head check to make sure that you're actually in the game, right? And you're not just pulling the Western academic student who's going to sit there with the only question in mind that they care about, which is this on the test? Because if it's not, they're not going to bother to write it down. They're not going to bother to remember it because, I'm only here to pass test and get that piece of paper at the end. Just like some people just want to pass test, or hell, if I don't have to test at all, that'd be awesome. As long as I get one of these, dude, it'll be great. Anyway, let's jump into this today. All right. So a bunch of episodes ago, right, I covered something called Tai Sabaki, right? Tai Sabaki, incorrectly translated as body movement, implies evasion and all that, right? It's not that it's not a part of it, right? But it's way more than that, right? During that episode, I pointed to, or I alluded to a subset of Tai Sabaki called Tei Sabaki. Okay, Tei Sabaki. There's also Ashi Sabaki, right? We talk about that some other lesson, right? Te sabaki. Hopefully you guys can see this red on here. Te sabaki, right? Te, right? I didn't misspell or mispronounce Thai. Okay, somebody brought that up. Like, it's Thai sabaki, dude. No, it's not. It's part of it, but this is te. Okay, te is one of the pronunciations for the alternate for shu, like shuto, right? Hand. Okay, sabaki, management. Okay, implying that we've got control over it, and there's rhyme to the reason, right? That we're just like a manager, right? Not boss, manager, someone who's making sure that the processes and tasks are done on time in alignment with the mission that's being completed, right? Okay. I know we've got lots of people out there with name tags that say they're the boss. Okay. They say that the leader, right? They don't have a leadership bone in their body. I'm not talking about that person. I'm talking about somebody who actually understands why the T's get crossed and why the I's get dotted. Because if you're not measuring your results, then you must be okay with whatever results you get. All right. So te sabaki, hand management. So I cut to the chase today, and what I really want to take a look at are 3 ways. And if we have time, I'll do a 4th one, which is actually going to pull 2 of these and kind of combine them, right? But 3 ways to use our hands in a fight, in a self-defense situation, outside of punching and grabbing. Okay, using the hands, which also implies all the way down the lower parts of the forearm. Okay. So yes, they're all connected and whatnot, but I didn't want to say hands and arms because that gets too convoluted, right? I'm talking about te and kote, right? This section, okay? So we're going to take a look at 3 basic ways, right? Again, aside from punching and grabbing, those should be a given. Those are the things that people tend to focus on, right? But what do we have, right? And for those who say, dude, all this stuff you're teaching, you don't have time in a fight to pay attention to that kind of stuff because it's too fast. You're absolutely right, which is why you can't stop training with something when you intellectually left brain get it or at slow speeds. Everything needs to be pressure tested, okay? The formula for this, I just gave it to students the other day. I'll change colors here, grab another color. I just gave students this the other day for what I expect that they're running the process through, so that for Nidan, when what I expect is that you can use Nimpo Taijutsu, Budo Taijutsu, whatever you want to call it, right? To defend against the single average enraged attacker on the street, right? Not super killer, assassin, whatever, not multiple attackers, single attacker throwing whatever he or she wants, okay? Using Nimpo Taijutsu and not falling back on anything else. That's what I expect for somebody getting Nidan. For those of you who've been gone through just Bujinkan ranking, right? Okay. Hatsumi Sensei's equivalent, or what he looks for based on this thing that I'm talking about, right? It's 8th or 9th dan, right? And if you look at the time that people have in grade, right? It's the same. But I would rather people be underranked and overskilled than to be overranked and underskilled. But hey, that's me, right? Anyway, so we start with a technique, we start with a skill, drill, whatever, right? What I expect is that you will start slowly so you can get the mechanics in, you can get that wired into muscle memory, right? And then you're going to slowly start to speed up, okay? And you're going to pressure test things, right? Trying to go faster and faster and faster. So the first goal is 80% correct. 80% correct at 80% full speed. Okay? 80-80. It's not the 80-20 rule. 80%. So 8 out of 10 times you do the technique at the speed you're going, it's correct. And you don't try to do anything else. You don't try to go faster or whatever. The speed you're going, right? Okay? So 80% correct. And so by Nidan, we're looking at full-on ass cracking fight, right? Okay. So if we're not at least 8 out of 10% or 80-90% correct whenever we're executing a skill at least 80% full speed, I don't know what we have. Okay. What I see is that as people speed up, their technique falls apart and they just start doing something. It's not that that something doesn't work, but just because it works doesn't mean it's Ninpo Taijutsu. Doesn't mean it's ninjutsu. Okay? Shit, you can do caveman fighting and still win the fight. But if that's what you're going to fall back on, then why bother studying any of this other stuff? Okay? This is about learning how to fight smarter, not harder. This is learning about scientific application, strategic, tactical application of things, right? Because ultimately, there's only so many things you can do with a human body, only so many things you can do to a human body, right? So, but anyway, that's the litmus test. So anyway, Teisabaki, hand management, right? So we're looking at three things, three uses, right, of your hands, arms, outside of just punching and kicking, okay? So the first one, and these are in no particular order, right? They're just how they fell out of my head when I was scribbling my notes, okay? First one is for cover and shielding, okay? So I wanted to get the most obvious out of the way because I could see people looking at this going, oh, duh, right? You're covering, right? Making sure that he can't get at you. Yeah, how, right? It's not the what, it's the how, the when, the why, right? Timing, all those kind of things, right? So we'll come back and visit that, right? Second one is in monitoring and information gathering. Okay, monitoring and information gathering. Okay, the number of people that I see or hear or encounter supposedly studying ninjutsu who are putting more effort and emphasis on any other part of the art other than the ninja's number one skill, which is information gathering, right? The more information you have, the more knowledge you have about the enemy, the circumstances and all that kind of stuff, the better your chances of being successful, as long as you have tools in your toolbox that can handle that, right? But the more options, the greater your chances of success, okay? So monitoring, information gathering, right? And the third one is in placement for target acquisition. Okay? That's not traffic accident. Right? Target acquisition. Okay. So let's take a look at these things a little bit more in depth, right? Covering and shielding, right? In our curriculum in Mod 1, one of the first lessons that people learn is what we tend to call high block because new people coming in the door don't have this background and stuff, right? So it's still uke nagash. It's just done from a very like kind of stable position, right? It's an elbow. It's a shuki ken, right? Because shuki, elbow gun, whatever, right, runs from here all the way down to here. So if I do this receiving, it's both uke nagash, but it's right doing it with the ulna of the arm, right? That's the first lesson, right? Because people need to focus on one thing at a time. So hook punch or something like that is coming in. We're shifting, right? Stopping that from hitting us in the head, right? It's kind of a last ditch effort, right? I don't have time or space to move. So it's just this quick flinch response kind of thing. See, this hand keeps popping up, right? I'm not blocking on both sides. Well, yes, I am, right? So as soon as they get this thing where they're stopping the obvious threat, right? Then we have them simultaneously bring up the other hand. So it's positioned between their primary targets, right? Life-sustaining targets and his other punch or kick, okay? Because I need to get it in place. The scrolls say take center of the fight, okay? So I need to get something between him and me. So he has to deal with this before he can get to the juicy targets he really wants to go after, okay? So what for a brand new beginner, right? They start with kind of checking this thing, and then they graduate to bringing this thing up. But you can't just put it wherever, right? Where is his other hand? What's the line of attack, right? So if I can force him to work around me instead of me having to try to second guess where he's going, I have a better advantage, right? Okay, cover and shielding, right? Another one is this monitoring hand. We'll talk about this thing here in a minute, right? I'm going to double back because these things are going to come together, right? So the shielding, right? So it doesn't matter which kamae I'm in, whatever, right? The idea behind the kamae, right? One of the questions people need to ask more regularly, right? Or regularly, right? From wherever you're from, right? Is why. Okay. So why in a given kami? Why in most of your kami, 89% of your kami are your limbs pretty close to the same areas, right? There are some exceptions, right? There are some exceptions, right? But why? Okay. So if we start to look at those things, not only am I controlling his options because I'm controlling center and making him come in a certain way, or I'm making him have to get something out of his way to go. But if you look at most of your kami, right, the limbs are positioned not just for attacking and not just for doing uke nagash and all that. The limbs are positioned so that he has to go over or under at least one to get at you or get it out of his way, right? But he has to go over or under or deal with it, right, to get at you, right? So if you understand combat, not just theorizing it, right? If you've ever been down and dirty in really bad situations, right? Dust, mud, blood, whatever gets into your eyes, okay? And all you see is a blur coming at you, right? They're positioned so that when that happens, right, even your flinch response, people throw around words, enlightenment, warrior, all that. Another word they throw around, especially within the Bujinkan, is the word natural, right? People would know natural if it smacked them in the dick, right? So what we're looking at is this idea that when you're surprised or when you don't know what's going on, there's this autonomic flinch response kind of thing. So if your limbs are placed where he has to go over or under them to get at you, and you have that flinch response kind of thing, your body will naturally create a blocking, parrying kind of thing. Not left brain, right? But if your arms are wherever, right, or you don't understand how to properly position them, what ends up happening is that flinch response leaves you more open instead of closing and covering, right? So it's a natural flinch response, okay? So this is a whole area of exploration. How are you covering? What are you covering, okay? Once I was in Japan training, and this is just the one that pops into mind because people do it all the time. I was training at Isuzu Sensei's dojo, and I was working with this one guy. We're working with this one technique, and every time he went into, I don't know, I think we were doing a Kotori Yukata, so it would have been Seigan, right? So every time he went into Seigan, right, his hands were pretty much where they were supposed to be, right? But this kind of falls into an Ashi Sabaki thing, right? His angling, his footwork, right, opened up his groin. And I don't just mean like opened up his groin, Kukishinden style, but I'm in a position where I can't get at it, okay? I'm talking about it was in range, okay? I stop him and I say, look, man, I'm not here to teach. I just want you to maybe be aware of something you might not be, right? Every time you go back into kami, your groin's wide open and I just want to kick it, okay? And he said, well, I don't have to worry about that because there isn't a kick in this kata. And I said, my mistake. I thought you always had to be worried about getting kicked into Johnson. Again, my mistake, okay? I never mentioned anything ever again, okay? Because his mind was obviously on feeling good about executing the step-by-step, and he was only going to pay attention to what the kata said was coming, even though the kata is a model or an example of a particular type of fight. But unless your ESP and your Kuji is really, really freaking good, and you know that this guy would never throw a kick, you need to make sure things are guarded, right? They're protected, right? So if we were talking about Ashi Sabaki instead of Te Sabaki, hand management, right? If we were talking about Ashi Sabaki, then we'd be looking at not at the upper body of the kami, we'd be looking at the lower body, right? So that I'm positioned in a way. Let me back up here a little bit more so you can see this, right? So when I pull into Hicho no kami, right? What people often don't get is that if the back foot isn't positioned correctly or the lead leg is turned in too much, what you end up with is targets, right? Either the groin's wide open, right? Or the leg is too sideways and now it's a target, okay? What I'm doing is pulling this in so the knee's pointing at the bad guy, but my groin is also covered. My groin is also covered, okay? Ashi Sabaki, leg management, okay? Anyway, so it's cover and shielding, right? Monitoring and information gathering. The lesson is have at least 3 points of contact with the opponent's body at all times. That's the ideal, right? 3 or more points of contact, okay? If you have less, okay, but having 0 is not good because you can't gather information. The more points of me that's touching points on him, the more I can feel when he moves, where he's going, force and intensity, tension, all that kind of stuff, right? So monitoring, right? In this case, we'll just take a look at these monitoring hands, right? I won't throw the Japanese out, just the monitoring hand, okay? So they're a little bit different in every lineage, okay? So typically, Gyokoryu tends to do it where the hand comes in to grab you, right? And we get this hand in between his fingers here, right? Between the knuckles and what he's grabbing, right? I get this in there with the thumb. In the Koto Ryu, it's the heel of the hand like I'm doing push-ups. In the Tagagi Yoshin Ryu, it's just coming up this way, right? In Shinden Fudo Ryu, it's almost the same thing, but the index finger finds its way in here, right? So when he tries to let go, it jams up for like half a second and gives you an advantage, right? But it's this thing, right? Because if I can touch him, again, it's not this kind of thing. It's just letting things lightly touch. In the Gyokoryu, there are other models in other lineages too, but in the Gyokoryu, like in the Kata Danshu, right? Bullet hand or ricocheting hand, it's at the elbow, right? So when he grabs, I couldn't get my hand here in time, so my hand just kind of comes up and rests right under here, okay? Part of doing things like when you're doing a muso dori or, muso dori, these arm bars and stuff, right? The hand goes there, the other hand comes over the top, but this hand isn't trying to it's not trying to force the arm bar, right? Its job is to find the elbow, the knob, and the gap behind it, the actual joint, the space. So when this hand comes over, it's going to have 100% of its strength on that gap, not on the bone, okay? So it's about finding things, right? Looking surprised, right? Except that you're gathering information, okay? So monitoring, gathering information. I might be touching him in kumyuchi, right? I don't care if I'm doing it with this part of my hand or if I'm in this kind of a position, one's on his arm, one's on his chest. I want to feel, right? What kind of pressure, what kind of strength, right? And I want to feel when he moves, okay? Again, the more I can have touching him, the better, okay? You'll see master teachers, Daishihan, Hatsumi Sensei, when he was teaching and whatnot, you'll see us touching, right? We'll guard and against something or whatever. It's not just to guard, right? I'm feeling, right? So this is about splitting consciousness, right? And not just doing something technique-wise, right? I'm blocking. Yeah, okay. I'm covering, but my touch consciousness is feeling pressure. It's feeling, does it feel like I can move to capture the arm? Does it feel like I need to ride around it because it's too stiff? What's it feel like? Okay. And again, I need to get this in there so left brain stops doing the work and right brain does the work, so it becomes instinctive. You're going to want to get to a point where it's in the level that Tagagi Yoshin calls breaking your own balance, okay? Where something comes out, but you didn't plan it. You don't even know why or how you knew to do that thing because the subconscious, unconscious system is doing the work, okay? And I don't mean like the oh shit moment because the left brain was trying to control everything and then couldn't. I don't mean that, okay? All right, so monitoring and information gathering. And then the last one is placement for target acquisition, okay? In Hatsumi Sensei's book, Togakure Ryu Ninpo, which has come to be known as the Shidoshi Manual, whatever, right? It's the Tenshijin Ryaku no Maki, okay? It's 3 levels. In the book, or in the chapter on striking, one of the main points is about speed, okay? If we're reliant on speed, then we have to hope that we can get things in there faster before he can respond, okay? But the secret is that distance equals time. The greater the distance from point A to target point B, right, the more time it takes to traverse that. So for most people, conventional thinking, what they try to do is throw the arm faster to get it in there. But to throw it faster, often what happens is you end up with tells, or you're just expending more energy, right? And the rule of survival is energy conservation, okay? That's why we're always talking about relaxed energy, okay? So in that chapter, the lesson is we don't try to throw a faster punch during tai sabaki, right? During the evasion, right? That kind of stuff. I'll keep it simple for people, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk my fist as close to the target I want to hit as possible. So I cut down on the distance. And that way, even if I go slow, perceptually to him, it was too fast to handle. It was too fast to respond to, right? The more space I put between fist and target, the more time his conscious and subconscious faculties have to watch that come in, and he'll flinch, block, evade, those kind of things, right? So what I want to do is I want to walk the weapon as close to the target as possible. This is demonstrated in the Kihon technique, Jumonji no Kata, right? It's not just about positioning for targeting. It's about controlling it so that you don't break shielding. You don't break the cover, okay? Beginners tend to do this. Hit, bring the fist back to stab the ribs, okay? But while you're doing this, you better hope he's not throwing another one, okay? So the trick is to go from Jumonji to Ichimonji to deliver the strike, and the fist should be lined up with the target, because the other lesson about punching is that the punch is not done with the hand and the arm. The punch is done with the legs. So one, this gets locked in, and then the lead knee delivers the strike, okay? So I never sacrifice cover and shielding to get the shot, okay? That's just caveman fighting. It's just slugging and throwing shit around and hoping that yours lands harder or you can take more than he can take. And it's caveman fighting, right? Not knocking it. Those guys win fights, okay? But if you're the smaller, weaker, slower, you're in the middle of the flu or whatever, going to get medication at the pharmacy or the apothecary or whatever you have in your country, right? And that's when somebody attacks you and you barely had enough energy to get out of bed. You don't have speed on your side. You don't have size on your side. You don't have strength on your side, okay? Everything in this art is about how do you win when you're the one that's the underdog. If it's even, do you really need 2,000-year-old secrets? And if you're the bigger, faster, stronger fighter, do you need 2,000-year-old secrets? According to Ishizuka Sensei, he reminds people all the time. You throw a crappy punch at him or a crappy kick or whatever, he'll get out of the way and spend a couple of minutes chastising you in front of your classmates that he doesn't need 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against shit. So get your act together and throw something, because the attacker, the uke's job, at the very beginning, they're helping their partner do the step-by-step to learn the moves. But as you go up in proficiency, your uke, your partner's job, is to drop the uke designation and take on the teki. Teki means attacker. Uke, receiver. Teki, right? They're supposed to resist. They're supposed to avoid. They're supposed to catch you making mistakes, that kind of thing, right? But see, that breaks the mutual admiration society bullshit that goes on in a lot of dojo, right? You help me and I'll help you, okay? You want to help me? Don't pull your damn punches, okay? Don't not resist a thing if you can resist it, okay? Because we both need to figure out what that point is when I'm doing a mushadori or whatever it is I'm doing. We need to know what that point is, where if it's before that and you resist, you're going to break my technique, right? If it's after that point, well, you can't resist. But there's a point, it's just beyond break even, that if you try to resist, you help me blow your shoulder out, or whatever the technique is, whatever the center point of the crux of that technique is. Okay, so when we're looking at these things, right? Again, cover and shielding, right? Are we managing that stuff, or are we just so focused on hitting him that we're leaving ourselves wide open? People do this all the time. the hell's this arm doing now? Okay. Hit. Cover, right? It's maneuvering the other arm. It's always in contact. It's always controlling to make sure that you're more and more breaking his balance as you move in, right? Monitoring and gathering information, right? If your hands are on him, right, are you thinking about your technique and when you're going to move? Or are you paying attention to the tension and whatever that's going on in his arms and his body so that you can read his moves, or you know whether or not that cool technique that you love to do is even a freaking possibility against this type of tension, pressure, alignment, whatever, right? Placement for target acquisition, right? It's just easier to hit the thing that's right in front of the fist instead of doing some wild and crazy whatever, okay? So going along with this placement kind of thing, right, and control, Shrey Sensei, one of the other teachers that I train with in Japan on a regular basis, has this very, very common saying. He says, good action do, right? Or what he says is best action do, best situation make, right? So he's using Japanese syntax with English words, right? What he's talking about is, right, if you're controlling certain actions, right? If you're paying attention to certain things, right? If you are simultaneously, right? And this is something we're going to be covering this Friday during the virtual class, right? What we want to do, we've got 3 goals with these things, right? We want to, and these are, again, no particular order, right? We want to speed up. What if I spell correctly? Speed up our strikes without punching faster, right? We want to remove options from him, right? We want to take away his options and what he's able to do to get at us by hand placement. And we want to know what he's doing before he does it or as he starts to do it, okay? So information gathering. And we're not relying on our eyes, okay? Because depending on what you're looking at, okay, you could have slowed, or how you're using your eyes, you could have slowed your processing time down by 250 times, depending on the sight faculty you're using in your head, okay? And that all goes to how you're adjusting your sight consciousness and what you're looking at, okay? If I'm using my laser vision, right, I'm paying attention to details, right? I'm looking at his fist, I'm watching his face, I'm talking smack, whatever, okay? To see his fist move, right, to even be able to respond, okay? It's 250 times slower, right? It takes 500 milliseconds. It's about a half a second, okay, to recognize that happening. Okay? I'm sorry, 200 milliseconds to recognize that's happening, okay? The other process, which softens the gaze, right? It's the Seigan in Seigan no Kamae, right? Or what we call Shizen eyes in my dojo, right? Softening the gaze so that your brain keys into movement and shape, right? That kind of thing, okay? It only takes 2 milliseconds, okay, for your brain to trigger the muscles to start moving, okay? There's a 250 time difference, right, in this thing. It's closer to 500 milliseconds, half a second, for you to be looking at something and to process it, right? So science already knows that at best, we're living quarter, give or take, maybe a little bit less than a quarter of a second in our past based on how our brain processes things that come in through our sense receptors, okay? You need to nullify that, right? You need to get it as small as possible. Okay, your response to things and all that. So on Friday, we take a look at techniques and skills and whatnot to speed up our strikes without going faster, right? Because as you get older, you young punks, right? You think that, right? Fat bald guy, right? Okay. I don't need to be as fast as a 20-year-old. I need to be smarter than a 20-year-old so that perceptually my strike is too fast for his brain to work. And it's not because of I'm doing it the same way everybody else is doing. I'm cutting down the distance before the punch is even launched, okay? Again, you don't have to trust me on it. Look it up in Hatsumi Sensei's book. Look it up in all these other masters that have done things forever, right? Okay. I want to remove his options. Okay. I want to position things so I can remove his options so he has a harder time getting at me. And I want to know what he's doing, right? That's his monitoring stuff, right? I want to know what he's doing before he does it, right? Okay. I promised a bonus. I've got a couple extra minutes here, so let's do one more on this thing, right? So your bonus is in combining these two. Okay, so we'll call this number 4. Okay. So let's go back to that monitoring hand that I talked about. Okay. Gyoko Ryu style, Koto Ryu style, Shinden Furo style, Tagagi Yoshin style, Shinden Furo style, which is sliding again, that in between the fingers and the palm kind of thing, right? But it has to be as he's grabbing, right? Okay. Again, at the very beginning of this, for those of you who've been around for the whole thing, at the very beginning, I talked about people posting these little comments about like any video demonstrations or examples of this stuff in action. Yeah, plenty. Go find them. Okay. I'm teaching you a very, very high level thing. You should be able to go take this knowledge, if you really understand it, go to any YouTube video, go to any demonstration, whatever, and pay attention and see if people are doing it. Oh, there it is. I never noticed that before. Or he's not doing it. Here's one of the ways they don't do it, right? Partner comes in and grabs, and then this guy brings his hand up. I promise you, when you start to move this hand, right? It's the same thing with sword drawing, right? You start to move this hand, he's going to do something. He's going to let go. He's going to yank, push, pull, or whatever, because you triggered his response mechanism. Okay? It has to be as he's grabbing. It's like catching it. It has to be at the same time. If you do this, he's going to see it, just like if I were wearing a sword, right? There's way too many people. They're confusing certain sword arts that are designed around moving meditation with actual Budo, with actual Bato Jutsu, right? So they'll be standing here with the sword thing, and then they'll go, as soon as you do that, he's going to cut your arm, okay? So if you don't have your hand there when you move or when you evade, it doesn't happen, as the scrolls say, onaji, same time, you die, okay? Or you luck out. That's a hell of a way to go through life. But hey, some people are pretty proud of it, right? So number 4 is in taking the shielding cover and the monitoring, right? So one of the reasons for the monitoring hand isn't just to gather information. One of the reasons for the monitoring hand is because in the old days, right, people would come in and grab the silk lacings that were holding the armor on, right? Or they would grab the kimono kind of thing to hold it, move you around, right? Arijime, that kind of thing, right? So this thing would come up because the tactic wasn't just to again, information gathering, right? On armor, the kote often had this piece that extended down this way, lacquered wood or metal, and then the edges were sharpened, right? Thinned out. So what they would do is grab the lacings and then cut at them to get them to loosen and get your armor to fall off, okay? Exposing things. If they're grabbing, and Hatsumi Sensei used to do this all the time. I used to call it the yo-yo technique. He'd grab somebody by the shirt or the jacket. He'd pull, right? And then push, or pull and then punch, right? So what they're doing is if you've ever seen anybody do this, right? They grab, bang, and they punch right here, right? Where your phrenic nerve is right here, right? This kimon point is access to the phrenic nerve. Phrenic nerve comes out of the back of your head, behind your ear, down your neck, under your clavicle, and plugs into the diaphragm on that side to help you freaking breathe. Well, it actually makes you breathe, right? So when somebody grabs and hits that, if they punch that phrenic nerve, they stall your diaphragm, and you've got breathing problems, right? Which means rhythms are off, your energy level is going to drop, response, head's going to start to get cloudy, all that, right? Okay. We're supposed to do that to them. If we know this trick, then we better freaking know how to stop them from doing it to us. So the monitoring hand, Gyoko, Koto, whatever, right? Especially these two, right? What they're doing is they're putting a buffer in between his knuckles and your phrenic nerve, or whatever is going to be hitting here, this brachial plexus and all that, right? They're getting it in there. So when he grabs and then tries to punch, he's going to, right? He'll move you a little bit, but he can't get impact. Okay. So the trick is to catch his fist, to catch his grabbing fist, like you're catching a baseball. Okay? Like you're catching a baseball. So it has to be at the same time. If you miss, that's where Gyoko has these other kind of places, right? Some lineages, you kind of drape your hands or arms. So you've got 1 point, 2 points of contact, that kind of thing, right? So you can gather other information, but the goal is to not miss. So my mod 2 guys, right, they go from all this stuff or being grabbed and then trying to neutralize that and write it off. In mod 2, they got to get this thing right, okay? So because we're going to start grabbing them and punching that chest because we're pulling the shirt, right? So they start falling forward and then we can punch into it. Because if I get you to fall toward me, it's really difficult, even if your muscles fire, to not fall into those knuckles, okay? So the bonus one is in combining the covering hand, right? Or the cover, right? With monitoring. So I'm going to use the monitoring hand, right? With another type of shielding. So he can't do something that, again, is often overlooked, right? Well, you know, because in training, people just read the words on the kata, right? He grabs, he grabs, he grabs, right? And then you do X, Y, Z. Yeah, what's he doing with his grab? Because I promise you, when somebody grabs you, they're only doing one of three things. They're going to grab you to pull you someplace, pull you into something. They're going to push you someplace, push you into something, or they're going to hold you in place to do something else to you. So to just train like none of that's going to happen, or that only he's going to grab me to, right? We're not playing with reality, which is why it's important for you to get with people that have actual fight experience. Okay? They know what it's like inside that bubble, and no amount of theory and bullshit is going to change that. Okay? So while these people may not be able to tell you how to do shiaku, seion, tangeki, whatever, right? All the cool kata you think you know, they may not be able to tell you how to do that, or they're still learning it, whatever, right? Okay? But they will tell you how you better be training and what better be a part of your training because, oh, by the way, bad guys do this. Gangbangers do this. Thugs do this. MMA guys do this. Okay? Anyway, that's it. There's the link down there again if you want to hop into the virtual thing. There's also a link on that page. Month or so ago, we released a full-on program that's kind of a bridge between this free stuff that I'm putting out and guys that get into my full platinum online training program and get into my inner circle. We've got this Ninpo Masterclass program. So there's a couple of links on that page that you can take a look at. It includes 2 virtual dojo classes a week. There's a coaching call a month that you can ask questions and get extra training with right alongside my inner circle guys. There's a butt ton of stuff. I'm going to be taking a bunch of those extra bonuses off here in the next week or so. Probably hold it maybe to Christmas, right? But after that, for the new year, we're doing some changes and all that, right? So at least take a look at it, check into it. If you just do the classes a la carte, $4.99, but there's a huge discount if you do the whole program. Anyway, that's it. If I can help you in any other way, shoot me an email. I don't know if the email address is on there, but you can send it to Warrior C. Let me write it out here. Warrior C, where can I put it? Warrior C at Warrior Concepts with an S online.com. I know it's long. I know you have to work for it, but hey, if lots of people before you can, it's only a couple of letters, right? Most of you guys text faster than that. Okay. Warrior C at warriorconceptsonline.com. Questions, whatever. Okay. Or if you're on the social services and whatnot, especially social media or whatever, like Facebook or YouTube, right? Just drop a comment. Okay. Keep it clean, keep it nice. Right. If you're just flaming and all that kind of stuff, or you gotta talk about my lack of hair or my gut or whatever. Right. One, it'll make me laugh, especially if it's really, really funny. So if you're going to do it, make it really good. Right. Make it worth my laugh. And then I'll just delete it anyway. So whatever. Okay. That's it. That's all I got. Talk to you again next time on Whiteboard Wednesday.